Meg, a character with so much potential at her release, yet right now she's more of these tank counter that's also a tank, but not exactly, which it's just not a fun way to play Meg, especially when you look back at the original Meg. So I had an idea. With the introduction of Kaze and the new most complex rarity ever Ultra Legendary, I thought, why not turning Meg into an Ultra Legendary? So firstly we're gonna rework the mecha. Usually these type of characters have a really strong mecha, which right now it is not working, and then a very weak brawler inside, which Meg it is a relatively decent brawler still. So fixing both of those things, we first need to buff the mecha. So the baseline HP would be increased from 7,000 to 10,000, which I know it sounds like a lot, but on top of that, the mecha would now have a health decay, losing 200 HP per second, which means that you would never have the mecha for longer than 50 seconds. Now, Meg on release also had this mechanic, and I never understood why they even removed it. And before we even think of using healers to counter this health decay, Meg would always have a healing reduction of 70%, so healers would not be nearly as effective with the mecha. Then we have the basic attack. Meg's basic attack right now, it's not necessarily weak, but it's just really basic and not fitting to a ultra legendary, or in my eyes even to a legendary. So now Meg in the mecha form would have a Ember or Draco Super like attack. The ammo amount would be increased from 3 to 20, so now it'd have a lot more ammo, but the projectiles per ammo would be reduced from 16 to 4. So essentially, 1/4 of the ammo would be your new ammo, but you would have more than 6 times the amount of ammo. So you actually have in total more projectiles that you can have. So your maximum ammo was technically increased. The reload time to compensate this change would be reduced from 1.1 seconds to 0.275 seconds per ammo, which means that to reload all of your ammo it would take 5.5 seconds. And this is actually made so that precisely to get the original 48 projectiles, that it is what you have right now with 3 full ammo, it would take the exact same amount of time. So essentially with this whole ammo and reload rework, it would still take the exact same amount of time to get what you would have right now as 3 ammo, but it would take longer to get full ammo. So essentially Meg now has more maximum ammo than what she has right now. On top of these, the damage per bolt would be slightly increased from 300 to 320, because with these new attacks she really needs a little bit more damage, and the range would be increased from 7.33 tiles to 8.67 tiles, allowing you to counter more brawlers, because if any brawler outranges the mecha can't really do too much against them. The final thing that it would happen to the mecha is that the charge rate would be reduced from 6.75% per bolt to 0%. So yes, hitting projectiles no longer charges your super. And speaking of super, now let's talk about Meg's actual ultra legendary mechanic. And this is the more complex part of the kit. Meg would now have 5 supers, but unlike Chester, who just skins a random super, these 5 supers would always be in the same order. And whenever you used a super, you'd move on onto the next super. So the real skill would be on using the sequence of supers as well as possible. So sometimes if you misuse one of the supers, that could be really bad. But to actually answer to why you no longer charge your super with projectiles, it is because the super, while you are at the mecha, would auto charge in 5 seconds. And even though it sounds really strong, just remember that it will always take 5 seconds. No matter how many projectiles you land, it is always those 5 seconds, and there will be nothing you can do about it. So with all of this being said, let's actually talk about each of the supers. The first super would be called Bash. You would dash in a 6 tile range, very similar to Daryl's super, but you would destroy walls, push back enemies, the damage would be 1600 damage, and you can adjust the length of your super similar to Bull. Essentially, this is a Bull super, but with less range and without the slow at the end. This is essentially just for you to get close to enemies and to deal good damage and to break walls. So a very simple super and very reasonable and balanced for what you can get in only 5 seconds. Your second super would be a laser sword. It would work exactly like Meg's nowadays super works, but it would have a couple tweaks. The damage would be increased from 3,400 to 4,000, and now the sword would also stun the enemy for half a second. Meg's original super was exactly this, but without the stun, and it was actually good because no one would dare to come close to the mecha because of that sword swipe, and these bonus damage and the stun would just allow the mecha to deliver a powerful hit if the enemy tries to get too close to you, if you have this super. Your third super would be Heart Blast. It would be very similar to Mandy's super, but with a lot of important tweaks. The unload time would be 1 second instead of 0.75 seconds. You could still move while unloading these Mega Blasts, but the major difference is that the Mega Blast would not go through walls or enemies. Instead, when it collides against either one of these, it would release a massive explosion which would have the same radius as a dynamite super, and with such blast, it would deal 5,000 damage to enemies, knock them back, and destroy walls. This would be a very versatile super because you could use this in long range maps because you would get these 5 seconds, so you don't even need to actually get close to them, but actually hitting these would be very hard, so potentially most of the times you could just use this super in case someone gets close to you if they don't manage to run away, or just to simply destroy walls. This would be by far the most versatile super of them all, honestly. The fourth super, it is a very simple one. After 0.5 seconds of unload time, gain a 5000 HP shield which decays in 20 seconds, which means that it loses 250 HP per second. Very simple, allowing the mecha to survive a little bit longer, and this also means that if you use the 3 previous supers within your time limit, you get kinda rewarded with a longer duration, because 20 seconds of protection, it is really good. Your fifth and final super would be called Shooting Menace. You spin and shoot projectiles in all directions twice in a row, similar to Daryl's gadget, but as I said, you do it twice in a row, and for the duration of the spin you can still shoot and you have infinite ammo. So this would be kind of your ground control attack, or you could also try to use this in case of an enemy getting too close to you, like a Kenji or a Morris. But for the duration of the spin your super won't auto charge, so it will just take a little bit longer to get your next super, like half a second, 0.8 seconds. It's a bit specific but important to mention. So with the 5 supers of the mecha explained in the correct order, so the order would always be Bash, Laser Sword, Heart Blast, Energy Shield, and then the Shooting Menace. Always in this order in a circle. So after using Shooting Menace, you go back to Bash. So using your supers as efficiently as possible, it is essentially the ultra legendary feature of Meg. With the mecha now solved, we now need to talk about the human form. If we just buffed the hell out of the mecha, we now need to nerf the human form, which is the whole point of this rework. So it would have the following nerfs. The Meg HP would be reduced from 4600 to 4400, which is the same as Tick. Her range would be slightly reduced from 9 tiles to 8.67 tiles, which would be the same as the new mecha. The damage would be reduced from 600 to 560 per bolt. Her speed would be reduced from very fast to just fast, but has a little bit of a compensation. Whenever Meg comes out of the mecha, so when the mecha gets destroyed, Meg actually starts regenning faster, only taking 1 second to start regenning. Back when Meg was first released, this was kinda the time that it took for Meg to start regenning, yet it was a very strong feature, but nowadays, because you won't have the same store powers as you used to have back then, it won't be nearly as annoying. On top of that, because Meg has less HP, less damage, and less everything in general, regenning faster won't really do that much. But now let's talk about the second biggest change to Meg, which is how you actually go back into the mecha. One of the things that it's very important about Meg right now, it is just getting the super as fast as possible on the human form to make sure that you can go back to the mecha and then have all of your ammo, 7000 HP, very good stuff. But now that would no longer be the case. Now you would just have a bar on top of you, very similar to BB or Mortis, but it would take 30 seconds to fully charge. But you can kinda speed up the process by hitting your projectiles, reducing or increasing the bar by 1 second for each projectile. So if you hit 3 full ammo, it would only take 24 seconds to fully charge it. It doesn't help much. I think that most people just prefer to wait the 30 seconds for the bar to completely fill up instead of just dying, but in most case scenarios it would help at least a little bit. And when this bar is full, your next attack would be what would transform you back into your mecha. So this means that the super slot, it is free for Meg now. So what will her super actually be? And to that I'll answer, she'll also have 5 supers. Similar to Mecha, and to follow up her ultra legendary trait, Meg herself would also have 5 supers, always in the same order. So now we will talk about Meg's brand new 5 supers. The first super would be Toolbox. Literally what your second gadget is right now, but has a super. There is not much explanation. Meg on the human form, it is meant to be kinda of a support brawler in a certain way. So you're not meant to do much, and the toolbox would mostly help you a little bit to get more ammo, to maybe recharge the bar and the mech a little bit faster, but mostly to help your allies. The second super would be called Emergency Turret. At your exact location, similar to Chester's Slowing Area super, you would spawn a 5k HP turret that decays 500 HP per second. This turret would be exactly like Jesse's turret, except it would only have 5000 HP and it would decay 500 HP per second. This is just literally a meat shield in case someone tries to attack you. It is that simple. There is nothing that special about the turret, it is just a weaker Jesse super, and to be honest, it is really not that strong. The third super would be called Jet Escape. You execute a jump exactly like Edgar, but you would not have any speed boost at the end of the super. Again, another just weaker version of a super of another brawl that already exists, but I mean, you get these supers in just 5 seconds. Which I did forget to mention, your super even in Meg form, it would still just auto-charge itself in 5 seconds. Nothing that special because the supers are relatively weak, but just enough so that Meg can survive a little bit longer. Your fourth super would be Oil Bomb. You throw a small bomb that when it lands on the floor, it spawns a fire area that lasts for 4 seconds, which if enemies pass through it, it lights them on fire, dealing 1680 damage over 4 seconds. The range and everything else would be just like a very basic attack, but a little bit weaker, except it kinda lights the enemies on fire, which is a little bit of an advantage. It does not have any impact damage, so do not think on using the super defensively because that will get you killed most likely. The final super of Meg would be called Mecha Recall. The bar that you have to recall the mecha would instantly fill up 20%. So you would have to wait less 4 seconds to get, actually no, less 6 seconds to get the mecha. Essentially, if you cycle all of the previous 4 supers, you are rewarded by having to wait less 6 seconds for the mecha. The fact that this is the 5th super, it kind of forces you to just use as many of Meg's super as you can to get the mecha recall as fast as possible, because waiting less 6 seconds to get your mecha, it is really great. So having that as the 5th super will just force you to use your supers, and the supers again are not strong at all, so just cycle through them to get the mecha as fast as possible. That is my honest tip here. Now that we have discussed every aspect of Meg and the mecha, we now will go on to the gadgets and star powers. The first gadget, while on the mecha form, it would be called Weapon Swap. Remove all of your current charge that you have and swap to your next super. So if you have the bash and you don't want it, you press the gadget, lose all of your current super, and your next super will be the laser sword. But while on the human form, instead you sacrifice all of your current ammo to swap to your next super. This gadget just simply helps you to swap your next super while on the mecha. Not really that strong because you also lose your current charge, but let's just say that you really don't want like the 5th super and you want the dash. Instead of just using the super, you can just use the gadget and not even have to show what super you have. If you want to use it sneakily, I don't even know if that's a real word, but if you want to not show what super you currently have, this gadget is a really powerful thing because the enemy might think you have a super, but then you actually have the next one. As for the Meg, in her human form, sacrificing your current ammo could also mean sacrificing potentially getting the Meg faster, but let's just say that you really don't want the toolbox or you really need the emergency turret. You just press the gadget and immediately change to that super. You don't lose any charge rates on the second part of the gadget, so you can use this gadget more defensively while on the human form. As for the second gadget, it is kinda the opposite. While on the mecha, you lose 500 HP and 10% of your ammo to change your super to the previous one. And this is actually what would make the mecha relatively versatile. If you are on a sniper map, you don't really want the laser sword or, I don't know, the energy shield could still be helpful, but you need to be specific about what super you want. So, if you always want the Heart Blast, what you can do it is use the super, the Heart Blast, and when you move on to the next super, you press the gadget to go back to the super that you want. Because this is a quite strong thing to do, you need to sacrifice HP of the mecha, which you will most likely never get back, and 10% of your ammo. So if you really need to get your previous super, it will be a worthy sacrifice. As for the human form, you instead remove all of the super that you have currently charged and change to the previous super. This happens because if you want to get to the 5th super, because you spawn with the first super, you can actually go back to the mecha recall super, which would be a sneaky strategy and it could be really broken because if you actually did that, you would always have a mecha 6 seconds faster, which would be very strong. As for the cooldown of the gadget, it would still be the 10 seconds, because doing this forever, it could be really strong. Getting always the same super back to back, it is really strong because always having the laser sword, no one would ever approach you, and if you always have the energy shield, you would always have protection. So this gadget would be really strong, therefore the stronger sacrifices that you would have to make. So be careful while using this gadget. As for the star powers, we have the first one, which would be called Premium Garage Service. The bar takes 20% less time to become full, which it's just a simple and very strong way for you to get your mecha way much faster. As for the second star power, it is called Plan B. When the mecha gets destroyed, it explodes, dealing only 640 damage, pushing back enemies and slowing them down for 2 seconds. On top of that, Meg would also gain a 5k shield, which would lose 1k HP per second, so the shield would never last more than 5 seconds. This is a very similar version of the second star power that we have nowadays, but way much less aggressive because these barely deals any damage. Do not confuse the star power. A lot of times you actually use the explosion as an extra offensive because it just deals so much damage, but because this version of the star power deals practically 0 damage, this would be a only defensive star power. Essentially, if the enemy is picking a so aggressive brawler like, I don't know, Bull, Daryl, Kenji, I guess, these would slow them down, give you protection, allowing you maybe enough time to get a super with Meg to maybe get a little bit of a better fighting chance. So with the star power choice, you either choose having the mecha faster, or you choose survive long enough to potentially get the mecha but a little bit slower. So the choice is up to you. Then we would also have a brand new mythic gear, which would be called Calibrated Mecha. The mecha health decay would be reduced by 50%. Just something simple, it helps your mecha to survive longer, and it allows you to stay on the mecha for longer, which allows you to use more supers, more chaos, more destruction, which it's always helpful. The final thing that we have to talk about, it is the hypercharge. And this hypercharge would not be the usual boring 5-second bonus damage, bonus shield, bonus speed hypercharge. I never liked that. So the hypercharge name would be called Emergency Mecha, and it would cost 12 supers. Because the only way of getting the super, it is by waiting 5 seconds. Essentially, you would have your hypercharge always guaranteed after 60 seconds, which is 1 minute. And I think that is a very balanced way of getting the hypercharge. Always 1 minute. It is up to you to use it as efficiently as possible. So, for the effects, on the human form it is very simple. You just immediately transform into the mecha. Still with a 1 second unload time, but it's just going back into the mecha. But the real deal it is, if you're already at the mecha and you activate the hypercharge, you will execute a 2-second transformation into what I would call the ultimate mecha. See the ultimate mecha as just literally a stronger version of the already existing mecha. So, the stats of the ultimate mecha would be 25,000 HP, but it would have a health decay of 1000 HP per second. This means that the ultimate mecha would never last more than 25 seconds. The reduced health, instead of being 70%, it would actually even go to 80%. And another disadvantage that the ultimate mecha has is that the movement speed is only slow. So the mecha, it is way much stronger but also a bit slower. For your basic attack, you would shoot 50% more projectiles, so you know that each arm technically shoots 2 bolts. Well, for the duration of the ultimate mecha, you would shoot 3 bolts per arm, essentially. The hitbox size would also be increased to the big bot from the training cave. I don't know why Supercell never even tried that. The auto charge would be 4 seconds instead of 5 seconds, so you would get the supers even faster. And all of the supers would be upgraded, so they would all be in some way stronger or at least a bit different. So the first super would be Upgraded Bash. You would dash in a 7-tile range with double the speed of your previous bash, which it's like even faster than a Fang super. On top of that, instead of just breaking walls, you would now shatter walls into pieces. Similar to Stu's second gadget, each wall that you would break would split into 5 pieces, dealing more damage. The dash damage would also be increased to 1920. The only downside of these upgraded bash is that you actually cannot change the length of the super. So you need to aim this dash very well. And each piece of wall would deal 216 damage at level 11. The second super, it is the upgraded laser sword. On top of the regular laser sword, which is the 400 damage and the half-second stun, on top of that, you would also shoot a shockwave, very similar to Gale's super, but with less width and less range, which would deal 800 damage, push enemies back, and slow them down for 1 second. So the sword, on top of dealing even more damage up close, would also slow enemies, and it would even have area control. Your third super would be the upgraded Heart Blast. It's again the same effect as Mandy's hypercharge. You would shoot 3 projectiles with the same angle and everything. The projectiles would stay exactly the same. The major difference is that on top of the explosion, on impact, it will also create a burning area for 4 seconds, similar to Penny's mortar burning area, which would deal 500 damage per second, so even more damage, and if an enemy gets close to you, they'll get absolutely melted with 15,000 damage, so I think that is pretty good, honestly. The fourth super would be the upgraded energy shield. After 1 second of unload, so double the unload, you would get a 5k shield which decays 250 HP per second, but on top of that, for 5 seconds you will also get a buster shield in your front. So you would get essentially a lot of protection with the upgraded energy shield, which would be really great for tanking damage. Not just protection, but also to play more aggressively thanks to the shield, really. The fifth and final super would be the upgraded shooting menace. You would release a spin attack similar to Daryl's 4 times in a row, and for the duration of the spin you can still shoot, and you also have infinite ammo. One of the other differences from the not upgraded shooting menace is that while you're spinning you still auto charge the super, so really you just have even more ground control, even more damage, because you would technically also have for longer time infinite ammo, because more spins takes more time essentially, so even more ammo. And the fact that you still auto-charge the super just still allow you to cycle supers, which is something that you could not do in the regular shooting menace. The final detail that I also need to talk about the hypershot is that once the ultimate mecha gets destroyed, you go back to human form. So no mecha after mecha, that would not be the case. Once the ultimate mecha got destroyed, you would just be regular mech again. Another detail that I also have to talk about, not anymore about the hype shots, but for the regular kit, just to make it clear, whenever you respawn into the mecha, you go back to the first super. So imagine that if you were into mech form and you had the third super and you transform back into the mecha, you would still have the bash. So keep that in mind, because whenever you would swap form, you will always reset the supers to the first one. It is a small yet I think really impactful mechanic, because that means that on the human form you cannot choose which super you would get from the mecha right at the start, because I honestly think that would be a little bit busted if you could just choose the super like that. I mean, you already have gadgets to help you with it, so I don't think that the human form having that ability is really that much necessary. And with all of this being said, there you have it, Meg Rework if she was an ultra legendary. I would have loved to see, if not Meg, at least a brawler with a similar mechanic to this, where you actually have an order to the supers. I think that could be really fun, and Meg would be a character where that would just make a lot of sense, honestly. Hope you enjoyed today's video. Write your opinion in the comments down below about what brawlers should I try to turn into an ultra legendary next, because I'm open to opinions, honestly, and I would like to make more videos similar to this, making brawlers unnecessarily complicated. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you all on the next video.